Daf Yomi, tractate Bava Batra, page 96a, top of the page, with the words Titania, Bodek Sachavis, Leos Mafrisha Letruma Vahoilech, Via Kargag Nimzes Koibis Koshlesh, Yoim Vadim Mikan Velech Sofek. As it is taught in a Braita in Tosefet Trumot 2.8, with regard to one who inspects a barrel to see if it contains enough wine to continually mentally separate truma from it, to exempt other untithed wine he has until all the wine in that barrel would be truma and would be given to a priest, and afterward the contents of the barrel were found to have turned to vinegar, which cannot be set aside as truma for untithed wine. Then all 3 days after he had last inspected it, it is definitely viewed as having been wine, and any wine for which truma was separated during those days is tithed. From that point onward, more than 3 days after the previous inspection, it is uncertain as to whether it had already turned to vinegar. And any wine for which truma was separated during those days is not tithed. Mike Amar Yochanan Hachi Kamar Kol Shlosha Yamim Rishonim Vada Yain Mikan Ve'elach Safek. The Gemara clarifies what is the Braita saying. Rabbi Yochanan says that this is what it is saying. For all the first 3 days following the inspection, it is definitely viewed as having been wine that had not yet turned to vinegar. From that point onward, it is uncertain as to whether it had already turned to vinegar. Accordingly, any wine for which truma was separated after those 3 days by means of designating the contents of that barrel as truma and has an uncertain status. My time, what is the reason? Chamra mi'ilo okel v'hai taima loy okal im timte loymal basel detami okal ha'recha chala v'tamei chamra v'chol reichei chala v'tamei chamra chamra. What is the reason? The process in which wine sours, the process in which wine turns sour and becomes vinegar starts with the wine at the top of the barrel, and it is that wine which he tasted when he inspected it, and at that time it had not yet soured. And even if you say that immediately after he tasted it, the wine began to sour during the following 3 days, it would have the odor of vinegar, and its taste would be of wine. And anything that has an odor of vinegar but its taste is of wine is regarded as wine. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi amar kol shlosh yom achronim v'alei choymetz mikan ulhalan sofek. And Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says that there is a different interpretation of the Braita. First of all, the last 3 days preceding the discovery that the wine had turned into vinegar, it is definitely viewed as having been vinegar from that point and earlier until the time it had been inspected. It is uncertain whether or not it was wine or vinegar. My time, what is the reason? Chamra mitatai yakar ve'omarak ve'lama daiti. Im timtelo imao. Mi ilo yakal, hatay mi lo yakal, di mi batal, di tay mi yakal. Ha ve'reche chala v'tay mi chamra. Ve'reche chala v'tay mi chamra chala. What is the reason? The process in which wine turns sour and becomes vinegar starts with the wine at the bottom of the barrel. And therefore, since the inspection was limited to the wine at the top of the barrel, it is possible to say that the wine at the bottom had already started to sour, and one was unaware of it. Consequently, It is possible on the day that he tasted the wine turned entirely into vinegar, and even if you say that the process in which wine turns sour and becomes vinegar starts with the wine at the top of the barrel, and it is that wine he tasted when he inspected it, and at that time it had not yet soured, perhaps immediately after he tasted it, the wine began to sour, in which case its odor would be of vinegar and its taste of wine. And anything that has an odor of vinegar but its taste is of wine is regarded as vinegar. Diromai mas mishmei Rabbi Yehoshua Levi. Rishonim v'adayayin achoyim v'adachoyim etzimtzayim Sofer. The sages of the south taught another interpretation of the Batra in the name of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. For the first 3 days it is deliberately viewed as having been wine. For the last 3 days it is definitely viewed as having been vinegar. The status of the wine during the interviewing period is uncertain. Haguf Akashya Amart Rishonim v'adayayin al marayich chalavtayim v'chamro v'hadar amrit achroinim v'adachoy metz al marayich chalo v'tayvei chalo chalo. The Gemara asks, this matter itself it is difficult, as since you said that for the first 3 days it is definitely viewed as having been wine. Apparently, if it has the odor of vinegar but its taste is of wine, it is regarded as wine. But then you said that for the last 3 days it is definitely viewed as having been vinegar. Apparently, let's see, vinegar. What's the English gematria of vinegar? Let's see here. 76. Whereas wine is 51. Okay. Apparently, 76 and 51 is 127. Okay. Apparently, if it has the odor of vinegar but its taste of wine, it is regarded as vinegar, as it can be established only that the odor had changed 3 days ago. The Gemara resolved this difficulty. The sages of the south hold that as long as the wine still tastes like wine, it is regarded as wine. When they said that when a barrel is found to contain vinegar, it is certain that the wine had already turned into vinegar 3 days previously, they were referring to a case where the barrel was found to contain strong vinegar, as had it not already soured 3 days previously, the barrel would not have been found to contain strong vinegar. Rather, it would contain only mild vinegar. Keman pashat le pligi bar of mari v'avzvid chadmo kav yochanan v'chadmo kav Yehoshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yosef claimed that these Bryanta can serve as proof with regard to which blessing is recited of a wine that has the odor of vinegar but tastes like wine. Having cited 3 different interpretations of that Braita, the Gemara asks, in accordance with whose interpretation did Rabbi Yosef resolve the question of which blessing to recite? Rav Mari and Razvi disagree about it. One said that Rabbi Yosef resolved it in accordance with the interpretation of Rabbi Yochanan, that this liquid is regarded as wine, and the blessing for wine should be recited over it. And one said that Rabbi Yosef resolved it in accordance with the interpretation of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, that the liquid is regarded as vinegar, and the generic blessing by whose word all things came to be, Shakol Yebid Varo, should be recited over it. There is no definitive resolution of the dispute. Itmal Hamoichel Chovis Yain Nechavei Roi Vehech Mitzo Amorav Kol Shlosh Yomim Horishoidim Bereshus Moicher Mikran Ve'elach Bereshus Loikeach. An Amoraic dispute was stated with regard to one who sells a barrel of wine to another, and following the sale it turned to vinegar. Rav said if it soured during any of the first 3 days following the sale, it is presumed that it had already began to sour in the domain of the seller, and he bears financial responsibility for it. From that point and onward, it is presumed that the wine soured in the domain of the buyer, and it is his laha.